Well, good afternoon, and thanks for your interest in GoGold. GoGold really in the last year has been a company under transition. I'll go into that here in a moment. But just a little bit about our track record in Mexico and what we've been doing down there for the last 21 years. These are the companies I've been CEO of. Over the last plus 15 years, we've raised about $800 million of equity for our projects in Mexico, plus several large debt deals in excess of $100 million. And the first was Gammon Gold. Took that one from discovery all the way through to production. I was CEO for 12 years, and we acquired that from a private family in Mexico. And why I raise that point is because that's where we've acquired a lot of our projects in Mexico. Private families, things that are kind of off the radar. And that project, for example, at the top of what was a very good market in the mid-2000s, was over $2 billion market cap. It was the asset itself, Ocampo, was sold for $750 million to Carlos Slim about 4 years ago. Also, Mex Gold, we acquired that from a private family for $20 million. A mine that had been in production for 60 years. We doubled the production, and we merged it for $375 million into Orico, and Orico later sold it for $250 million to Endeavour Silver, their El Cubo mine. And that was 8 years after we acquired it. Nairi Gold, actually, that one I was not CEO of. I just bought a large chunk of it in the market and took it, and I was a consultant, took it through pre-feasibility study. And then the more recent is GoGold. And GoGold, we have one operating mine today. We had a development asset until last November, and it was acquired by Agnico Eagle for $80 million US in cash and a royalty. So our capital structure today, 171 million shares. You'll see some options and warrants there. Unfortunately, they're well out of the money, and there's about a year left on them. So really, on a fully diluted basis, we're about 172 million shares. 12.6 million US in cash. And we also have a big receivable from the refinery right now. I'll tell you about another $2.5 million. So we're close to, at the end of this quarter, we'll be close to 15 million bucks in cash. And insiders own about 30% of the companies. I would be one of the largest shareholders of the company. And a lot of the institutional shareholders that you would recognize. So the two projects, Santa Gratuitas up in Sonora, that's one we just sold to Agnico, and our Parral operating mine. So that deal with Agnico, to frame up kind of what we do on the exploration side and the development side, that was an asset that had been out there. It was actually built by Phelps Dodge in the early 90s, and it sat there, produced about 500,000 ounces. It was shut down in 2000 due to low gold price. Another junior picked it up in the 2005, and it really sat there through the last boom. And interestingly enough, it was sitting there. We acquired it for $9 million in 2014. We spent 11 million bucks on it. 3 years later, we sold it for 80 million cash and a royalty. And that royalty, 2% at smelter, 1% they can buy back for $7.5 million, and then the other percent we hold. But I guess on this, we feel that royalty is worth about 13 to 15 million right now in the market. We're getting quite a few inquiries on it. And if you really think about our cash in the bank and the royalty, add up to about $27 million. And also our inventory on the heap today is about 25 million, which adds up to about 55 million bucks, which is more than the market cap of the company, which is $50 million today. So what about our operating asset, Parral? It's kind of a unique asset in that it's a large tailings reprocessing. And what's unique about it is the way we've attacked these tailings. Now, Mexico has a long mining history, about 450 years of mining. This mine in particular was operated for 300 years. There's 20 million tons of tailings there. They're good grade for a heap leach. They're about 0.31 gold and about 40 grams silver. They're right inside the city. The city's grown up around it, like a lot of cities in Mexico. They grew up around the mines. And it was an issue for the city, dust coming off these old tailings into the city. So we approached the city and we did a deal with them. We paid them $50,000 US a month. We built a heap leach about 14 kilometers away outside the city. And we're removing these tailings from the city. So a very environmentally friendly project. And reprocessing them. As I mentioned, they're a good grade for a heap leach. And what we're doing is something that really in the tailings business, I don't know if anybody else in the world in the precious metal space who have done this. It's an agglomerated heap leach. So we take these tailings, we contract mine them, we move them 14 kilometers down a highway, mix them with cement, make a pellet, and we put it out on a heap. And we extract a doré bar at the end of the process. There's the mine today. And I'll tell you, like, the stock price has been under a lot of pressure the last 18 months. And really here what has happened is that, as I mentioned, we're the first people to try this method on tailings. And why that's important is because there's hundreds of millions of tons of tailings in Mexico that really nobody's attacking today, not like South Africa where it's a big business. But why we went with a heap leach, after testing in the lab, it looked like it was very heap leachable. Low capex, $45 million we built this. We processed 5,000 tons a day. And low opex. Our cash cost per ounce is about $12. So now, being the first, we discovered that it didn't work quite as per the feasibility study. Basically, the lab testing said that it would scale up like this, and in reality it didn't. So about 18 months ago, we said, you know, we're getting the recovery, but it's taking 36 months instead of 12 months, which, as you can imagine, on a heap leach would tie up a lot of capital, which it did. We had about $45 million in inventory that we had to finance, plus a construction of $45 million. So we're a little bit stressed the balance sheet. Fortunately, we had done that. We had our development exploration asset, which we had a big score on. Basically made $80 million in 3 years. So we've cleaned up the balance sheet and lots of cash now and no debt. And we've got this working. What did we have to do to get it working? As I mentioned, the feasibility study, basically the recipe for this thing, said you can put these tailings at 10 to 13 meters high, leach them, and you get the recovery. What we found is that we just had to go back to the field and reboot the thing, and we had to, in the field, just a little bit of trial and error. So we went with a lower lift height at 5 meters. More cement. We realized that it's all about those pellets. I mean, unlike a traditional heap leach where you're crushing rock and processing it, we're actually putting the rock back together with cement. So that became a real important stage, and we had to have just that perfect agglomeration. And on the lift height, 10 to 13 meters was just too high. You get the stuff stacked up there, it didn't matter what the laboratory testing said, it just compacted, and then you didn't get good percolation. So the first 2.5 million tons, we did it just as per feasibility. In the last 18 months, what we've done is we've rebooted it, we've lower lift height, more cement, changed a little bit our regime on how we leach. There's a little bit of soluble copper. We've added a SART plant, which recovers the copper, gives us a sellable product in copper, and recovers about 80% of the cyanide, which is our big consumable here. The whole story is right here. And those curves, the green curve at the bottom, that's the feasibility. That's, you know, what the lab said, and our engineers out of Johannesburg, MDM, what they said it would perform at was a lot higher than that. So that's the first 2.5 million tons, and you can see a very slow curve. That's time over percentage recovery. And some of that material is out 36 months now. Then we started making changes as you go up from pad 12, 13, 14, 15. We started making changes, more cement, lower lift height, a little more cyanide the first month, put in a SART plant, and lo and behold, at pad 15 and 16, now we're up to 60% recovery in the first 12 months. And that's approaching what we ultimately wanted to see for recoveries in this, at about 67. So really, in GoGold today, what we have is an operation the last 6 quarters. It's been an increase quarter after quarter. We just released our production for last quarter, 417,000 ounces, the best quarter that the mine has ever had. We're starting to generate free cash flow. We have a strong balance sheet with no debt, 12.6 million cash. Our payables are very, very low, down at about 1.5 million. Our receivables are a lot of gold receivable at 2.5 million. So, and how do we view this? Are we just a tailings company? I mean, that's what a lot of people are saying to us. How interesting is that? Well, I would answer that in that it is interesting if you consider that we are the leaders on a technology where you can build low capex, low opex projects in a country where there's hundreds of millions of tons of tailings and make money doing it. So that part of the business, yes, that's one of our business models. But really, and I'm going to flip back here, the other business model that I think our track record proves and that we will be doing again in the very near future is this. Gammon Gold, $15 million paid in an option agreement over about a 5-year period. We turned it into the asset being sold for $750 million. Mex Gold, $20 million, again, private family. We turned it into $375 million. More recently, in the last 3 years, exploration asset that was out there. We were lucky to do a deal with one of the premier majors in the business, but that asset was sitting there for years and years, and we recognized it, and we turned it from $9 million into cash of $80 million plus a royalty worth $15 million. I can tell you that we're going to do that again. The other prong of our business is that we're, through our network of 21 years in Mexico, we are looking at assets to do more exploration. And in our view, what we see in the market is potentially a crisis of new product for the mining companies over the next 5 years. There has not been a lot of exploration done out there, and we think that will be the next up leg of the market. And we have a vehicle that generates cash, and we're going to use that cash to go out and do what we've done in the past. So, with that, if there's any questions, open it to questions.
Has anyone got any questions there for Brad?
Yes.
What's your view on the politics in Mexico with the coming elections?
Yeah, I've been there 21 years, and you know, there has been periods where the violence has increased in Mexico in regard to the drug cartels. Down in southern Mexico right now, in Guerrero, it's not very good. The northern part of Mexico, Chihuahua State, the northern states are pretty good. I think our security is very good in Parral. We have zero issue. It seems like things do heat up coming up to an election, typically, and the election will be on July 1st. And I guess a lot of that has to do with, you know, people seeing who's going to be the next boss in the country. And I don't think it's any secret that, you know, they tried to keep the violence under control, and I'm sure there's some back channels that, you know, they can't wipe out the drug cartels, but certainly they try to keep it under control. So I'd say right now, mostly in Guerrero, things are a little tense. In the northern states where we're working, not at all. And I think after the election, July 1st, things will probably calm down quite a bit.
Can I ask a quick question on the tailings projects that you're looking at within Mexico? Have you were talking about targeting certain things, but was that more exploration than the tailings?
More exploration, yeah. We're going to go back to basically our roots. I mean, we've only really been out of exploration since November. And we've been looking at a lot of projects. And there's some things out there on our radar that we think can add a lot of value and repeat what we've done in the past. We have a very, very strong exploration team in Mexico, and we're really into the, we've been there a long time, and we're in the grassroots of Mexico as far as finding projects, and we have good connections in with a lot of the private families and their projects, and that's where we usually go first.